Inspired by seeing her grandfather play the violin when she was a child, Irene Cohen's musical journey began before she even knew it. Her life in the Netherlands, Israel, and her years with the New Horizon Band in London were just a small part of this extraordinary musical story. Irene Cohen is next on OTP.
Welcome to OTP, Irene. Thanks so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Mark. And thank you for coming up with this idea. It's just another great way to connect people in our music world. So congratulations on this wonderful podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for taking the time. You're the president of the New Horizon Band. Before we get into all of that information, we want to see if you can take our audience into your living room, if you don't mind, and tell us about your grandfather and the great memories you have there.
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, it's incredible when music has always been part of your life that you assume that has been the case for just about everybody. And I realized that I was just really lucky, you know, to have been born in this family with a great focus on music. So, yeah, the first early memories of music for me really had to do with being at my grandparents' home. They had a beautiful home near The Hague in the Netherlands. And there was a great amount of music making. And my grandfather was a violinist, an amateur violinist, but very good nevertheless. And my aunt, his daughter, was a professional cellist. And I remember as a child going there every 2 weeks on Sunday mornings, and we would arrive at 10:30 in the morning, and then they were still playing music with I guess friends, other musicians, usually quintets, quartets in the living room. Wow. And there was a piano there, and we were not allowed in. And I remember there were these doors that were locked, but there was a little hook on the door, and just enough open up the doors. And I sit on the floor and with one eye sort of look through there, and I could see this whole other world of people making music. And my grandfather was this lovely, joking man. And to see him there with his eyes closed, playing this violin that we were not allowed in. We were not allowed in that world. I suspect that in so many ways as a small child, it was a mystical world, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
now,
that's...
What was your grandfather's name?
Robert Cohen. And yeah, I was very close to him, so I refer to him still a lot. He was very important in my young life. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I want to stay on that for a minute. Robert Cohen had such an impact on you. You actually remember the time that you were going into these performances, you know.
Yeah.
And talk about, if you can, the feeling as you were peeping through that hole and seeing these performances. Do you remember the instrumentation and the music that they were playing?
I remember they were all string instruments. My grandfather playing the violin. I'm sure there must have been viola, maybe another violinist, and my aunt playing the cello. So what I remember, there were 4 or 5 people in the room.
Mm-hmm.
What I found out since is that my grandfather came from a very musical family of 9 kids, and they all played music, and few survived the Second World War, and his youngest brother, Emil, survived, and he was a flute player like me. And I was very close to him, and he gave me all his books. And this is when I was in my 20s. And I can tell you, after all these years of playing, I can still not play the level of flute playing that Emil did. So it shows you that they probably performed at a fairly high level.
Yes. You know, I find it ironic that we're having this discussion right at Passover time period. It's a great celebration to reminisce, to uplift the memories of
Yes.
your family. That is so cool. And as you were talking, I was envisioning in my family history, the statement of children are seen and not heard. And so you sort of had that as you were peeping through that little
Yes. Yeah.
opening there. Talk about how do you think that either consciously or subconsciously that experience and being submersed in the family like that had an effect? What kind of effect did it start you on that musical journey?
I don't remember the actual thoughts, but it was
Yeah.
very clear to me that this was going to be part of my life. I had to have a violin or a cello. It was either one or the other. And so no doubt it had a huge impact. I wanted to play violin or cello, but after the Second World War, Holland, of course, had a lot of shortage of places to live. And we lived in Amsterdam in a small townhouse that was enclosed by other townhouses. And I remember my father saying, "You're not going to play the violin because the neighbors won't like the practicing." And I was so upset by that. And my grandfather had said, "You can get my violin,"
Right.
but it never happened. And so in Holland, you learn the first instrument every child learns in school, and that is a music school. You only get music lessons if you are sent to a private music school after your own elementary school. And
Fascinating.
yeah, so everybody there starts with a year of music theory only. It's boring, you're 6 years old. And then you start learning the recorder, the soprano recorder.
Right.
And so I think that is how I got into woodwinds. I still love the sound, by the way, of recorders. In Europe, as you know, recorders are still used for, a lot of orchestral music, where here you don't really see that happening as much.
So that statement sort of gets me thinking about how, the youngsters, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're in a regular traditional subjects class, and then did you say it's sixth grade around there?
No, I mean, I started at age 6. It was my parents' choice to put all of us through music school. And
I see.
Yeah.
Now, did you get any? Did your grandfather or other family members give any lessons or start you to practice on anything, or they just went the traditional route?
Yeah, no, I don't remember. I had to play for him. So, whatever little tune I had learned, he played for me. But there were no official instructions, no.
I see.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So now you go into recorders and you're starting that. I want to ask you now, though, do you inspire to pick up the violin or to start that at all?
I have really given cello a lot of thought. I just love the sound of it. And maybe, Mark, one day I'll still pick up a cello. I think if I really would put my mind to it, I could do it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's just fascinating to me. So also, you talked about that he had some practicing, and he wasn't allowed to play jazz at all. That was talk a little bit about that.
Well, that was more about my dad. My dad was a very good musician. He apparently, as a young child, learned how to play the piano, and this is all pre-war. So that would have been at the early jazz era, and he loved jazz, and he had a very traditional teacher. and a very traditional set of parents who felt that jazz was like maybe the way we would think of hip hop now.
Yeah.
And they just felt that that was not what he was allowed
Right.
to listen to or learn. And my father, being who he was, he said, well, then I won't play the piano. So he stopped his lessons based on that. And then the war really broke out. I think that that was another reason why he got out of playing. But the reality, he always talked about this very strict teacher who would not allow him to play any jazz tunes. But instead what he did, he started to sing. And he was a fantastic singer.
Wow.
And he would imitate many jazz musicians in the living room, standing there singing.
Wow.
Yeah, and he'd imitate Louis Armstrong. He could scat, for instance.
You like that?
And don't forget, we are in the Netherlands, where we
Right.
don't speak English. That's not our first language. But he knew all these songs. His English is very good. And so I think that although it was an unofficial way of maybe, doing traditional music studies, my father expressed his musical abilities and desires through singing. And Mark, he did so until the very, very end of his life.
How do you like that?
The day before he died, he was sitting in his wheelchair. He was 97.
Wow.
My son was there, and I said, okay, you want me to play some jazz? And he said, sure. I said, what do you want me to play? And he said, Ella Fitzgerald, Just
You like-
Basket, he said. And he sang the song from beginning
Oh,
to
God
end.
bless him. How do you like that?
Yeah.
What a great story. What was his name?
Emil. His name was
Emil.
Emil. Well,
Okay.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow, that's great. Now, take us into Amsterdam in the Netherlands. The atmosphere. What type of events that you remember growing up and being played, the music being played there at that time?
Well, picture Amsterdam post-war. I mean, this is a very different city from what you know today. There were still many parts of the city that were uninhabited, particularly the areas where Jewish people had lived. They were empty. And Amsterdam was not really bombarded, but it was a very bleak city, also through the early 60s. But the art was very rich, and as children, we were taken to the theater by our parents to go and listen to, whether it was just theater or musicals or ballet or any of those things. So I would say that there was a very rich cultural tradition that remained, and that we were introduced to right through our young lives.
Right. So it really sounds like that when you went into this next school and studying music, that's where you really found your instrument, the flute.
Yes, I would say so, especially when I started to play alto and tenor recorders with the rich sounds that those instruments have. I really felt that I wanted to carry on with the flute, and it was also an affordable instrument. I understood how fingering worked, and so when I was in university, first or second year university, I bought a flute and I got a private teacher and started to learn how to play a flute, and really have been hooked since then. I love the sound of it. I love playing it. I picked up piccolo much later when I joined the New Horizons band. A few years in, I also added the piccolo just because I felt the band needed a piccolo.
Sure.
And it's not my favorite instrument, to be quite honest. And then I added tenor saxophone maybe about 4 years ago or so for the strict purpose of going into jazz. So I've taken private lessons, and I'm in 2 jazz-related bands, a swing band and a jazz band.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot of fun.
I've talked to other musicians on the podcast, asking them this same question about the timbre of the instrument. What about the tone? Do you think? I find it fascinating that as human beings, we sort of, like I allude to food, for example, that we have this appeal to either maybe the trumpet or the sound. What do you think really about the flute that caught your ear and made you want to move forward?
To me, it's a calming sound. It's a very, a sound that sort of belongs to nature. And
Yeah.
I think that really, that is why I really like beautiful flute sound. And as you know, as a musician, you're never happy with your sound.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I get a note out and I go, that was pretty close to perfect,
Yeah.
But then you can't reproduce it again. But I love that feeling.
And let's dive into that for a quick second. The flute, technically, I taught it, and I'm nowhere near able to play it as well as you and others that do this. But you have these other trick areas of the instrument. Part of your air is going into the atmosphere, and as you're playing that, what do you find well, first of all, what did you find to be one of the most challenging part of playing the flute when you first started?
Getting a sound.
Yeah.
It is an unusual way of creating sound.
Yes.
And once you get it, it's that moment. So that is a challenge. I still find a very high register of the flute difficult to get it right in tune, especially when you play with a few flutes, because to get that perfect in tune feeling in the very high register is very, very hard.
Yeah.
And so I love listening to professional flautists and concerts that they just know how to do that. And it requires a fraction of a millimeter of turning the flute or the lips, or,
Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. And that the brain can figure this out and maintain that knowledge. It's just really incredible. Yeah, yeah.
Did you ever entertain going to brass?
Never. That sounds like a woodwind remark. No way. No.
It's funny. I just crack up in talking. This is why I love this conversation with musicians, because from drummers to I've got to get some string players on here so they don't feel slighted, but to brass players, they have the same feeling. Have you ever wanted to go to a reed instrument? No way. I play trombone.
And it's not that I don't love their sound.
Sure.
I love the richness of the sound, but I just don't see myself doing that at all. Yeah.
The sound doesn't appeal to you to move forward on it, to go, would you say, for a brass instrument?
Yeah, I mean, I love the sound of a trombone, or in one of the concert bands, I sit right in front of the trombones. I just love the sound. Yeah. But I have always found it to be such an awkward instrument with having to move your arm in all directions, and I just don't. It seems so physical to me,
Yes.
Yeah.
That I just find it fascinating as human beings, like food, we navigate to various different instruments and the taste for our ear. And that's I find that so interesting. And when kids are starting in beginning band, as you know, here in the States, and we go ahead and have all the instruments demonstrated to them. And they'll select it on how it looks, what a color it is,
Yes, exactly.
And different things like that. But we try to give the ear to it. So,
well, I love showing my instrument to children. When I'm playing their children, I give them my instrument, and you can see they're holding it like they're holding a baby. They're afraid, and I say, you can just click on there, and they do, and you see their faces light up that they do this, and there's no sound coming from it, but there is this magic, I think, about a musical instrument,
right?
For all of us when we start,
Especially now when you get into playing the music, let's talk about that. So as you started playing your flute, what type of music did you navigate toward? Classical or?
Yeah, but predominantly classical. And in Europe, they use the Orff method, which was predominantly classical, using the sort of the Orff music method and applying it So I do not remember, for instance, concert band music as a child. When I joined New Horizons band, it was the first time I started to get into concert band music.
Mhm.
So just interesting that the way one approaches entrance to music is very different in North America from Europe.
Yes, yes. So now you spent time in Israel. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, I lived there for 8 years. Yeah.
Talk about your experience there.
Well, talk about a society and a culture where music, both the sort of more traditional Western music, but also Jewish people from all over the world bringing their music, be it Russian
Sure.
or Moroccan or, and then of course a large Arab population with their music. So there was an enormous learning curve there of even being able to listen to that music.
Yes.
And learning to like it and appreciate it. So I feel very enriched by that. Playing myself, I played very little during those years. And I think it was a combination of didn't really find the right people to play with. I was studying medicine. I had babies. Again, we went through war there. So we were very busy doing other stuff. And the musical instruments just weren't sort of the first thing to reach for me anyway. I think that's a real shame because in the country that's by far the most music-oriented country I lived in, I personally played very little.
Yeah, every episode I've talked to, we've talked about quote unquote life gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it be children, education, traveling, and so forth. I find it interesting that it would be kind of neat to find a way when life gets in the way and we're so busy to try to keep that music going, but it's difficult because we're absorbed by life, whatever that may be, illness or whatever. So I want to get into or tap on something you just said about the new music in Israel. When we find music that we really, you talked about liking music that you maybe may not be your cup of tea. You may not be what you really are into, but you're listening. I still try to do that. I am listening to, I'm getting older and some of the music out there is not exactly what I would purchase. But did you find any music at that time in Israel that you brought into the rest of your life as you moved forward?
I love klezmer music. I'm part of a klezmer group, but I predominantly love it using the Arab scale. I think there's another word for it. And I think that really has a lot to do with the fact that I got used to those sounds, that type of music. So there's a very famous tune in klezmer music called Araber Tanz, which means Arab dance, and it has a wonderful, and it's my favorite tune to play. So I think that has an impact on a person. Once you start getting used to that music, because really I had not been exposed to that when I lived in Holland.
Yeah, it's training the ear to a different taste, a different idiom that you can try to move forward. And I guess we either enjoy it and make it part of our DNA or not. So now you go to Canada, yes?
Yes.
And tell us about what was happening there.
Yeah, we immigrated to Canada, and then same thing. I mean, I went through the same thing. I had to get licensed here. That meant more education, and it was just very preoccupied with work and kids. When the kids were in their teenage years, I started to realize one day they will be out of the house. I got to pick up my music again. And that is when I joined the New Horizons band. I saw a tiny little ad in the university newsletter saying we need woodwinds. That's what it said. Woodwinds wanted. And I go, well, I play a woodwind. So I practiced, and I went to the first practice of my New Horizons band with the Handel sonatas,
Oh, yes.
because I wanted to show I can play these. And I said, I don't know, do I have to audition? I don't know what. And they said, can you play those? I said, yeah. They said, well, then you should go in advanced band. And I said, well, but I don't know instruction in English. And so I chose to go to the intermediate band to learn English music teaching. Yeah.
Now, I want to back you up to your children. How many children do you have?
2. I have a daughter and a son.
Okay. What's the names, if I may ask?
Yeah, my daughter is, her first name is Liora, Liora, and, she's going to be 40. I can't believe it. And my son is called Daniel.
Daniel. Yeah. Now, do they play at all?
Liora stopped playing, unfortunately. She played piano very, very well. Daniel still plays. He does both percussion and piano.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we may get him back into that. You never know. And
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. Now, did you teach or get them started with their music journey?
Yeah.
How did that work?
Well, very similar to what I had done. And so when they were very young, I think 6 or 7, they got into piano lessons, and that because that was sort of the thing to do here. They took many years of that piano lessons, and I thought they became quite good at it, actually.
Right.
But then they reached teenage years, and
life got in the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we're in the New Horizon band, and my goodness, talk about the experience, the camaraderie, the music.
Yeah. Well, the New Horizons band in London, Ontario is very big. It's connected to the university. So right away, we had a full concert band. And the very first time I was there, 2 people came to the front, and we are now friends, but I didn't know them then. And they said, we are thinking of organizing a trip to Europe. We just want to see a show of hands see if somebody's interested. And everybody put their hand up. And I came home and I said, you're not going to believe this. I joined the band and we're going to Europe. So this was just fantastic. And within no time, we made friends. But I would say that those trips overseas were very gelling for social relationships. So people became friends, and we still are a very good, large group here of friends. And this band is going, I believe, on its 10th trip to Europe next year. Yes. So it's become a tradition. Yeah.
You know, you made me think, I'll speak for myself, but sometimes I just get stuck in this rut of just, I want to stay here and play and do nothing else.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard for me to reach my brain to try something new at my age now. And I think that is great. Where did this idea come from those 2 members? How did that come up?
It's totally hilarious. You see, I live in London, Ontario.
Right.
And not far from here is Paris, Ontario.
Okay.
And there's another little town that used to be called Berlin, Ontario. It's now called Kitchener. So they were joking and they said, why don't we go and play in Paris? And meaning, an hour from here.
Right.
And then somebody said, why wouldn't we go to the real Paris? And that's how it happened. It was just an idea during a barbecue. And and they pulled it off. Yeah.
How do you like that? Well, in the camaraderie there and just now you said 10th trip.
Yeah. It's going to be on its 10th trip. I won't be joining next year, but yes, and I'm talking all of Europe. Yeah.
So what tell us, take us on the trip. What happens?
Well, it is wonderful. It's a 10-day trip. There are 5 concerts, and they could be in large plazas, beautiful cathedrals, or, a retirement home. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
And we usually draw nice crowds, and it's sort of done at an intermediate level because there are people of intermediate and advanced level going, but you want to keep it's stressful to be traveling and playing. And it's all for fun.
Yeah.
And we have a travel guide, and there's guides, local guides with us, and they show us around. And so, and as I said, people really gel from a social point of view, because suddenly you're in buses and planes together and eating dinners and being silly and singing songs, and it's great. Yeah.
Takes you back to the marching day times, or back in high school.
Yeah. Feels like high school. Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
That is great. Maybe we'll talk about that with the New Horizon band here in Albuquerque.
Yeah. Happy to help out. You know how to find me if you guys ever are thinking of something like that. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
So now let's get into your official administration level there. You're the president.
I was. I have to correct you there. I was for 2 years. So the way it works is Roy Ernst, the founder of New Horizons, I was at one of the band camps. I believe it was Chautauqua, which was, one of our big band camps. And he asked me, would you like to join the board? And I was still working hard and, can I really do this? Yeah. But I joined. And so you sort of go up the ranks as it goes. Right. And at one point I was asked to be the president of the board. Mm-hmm. And I said, sure. And then everything went wrong because 2 months later, the pandemic started.
Oh, my goodness.
And of course, New Horizons International Music Association, or NEMA, which is separate from our local New Horizons bands. But think of it as sort of the umbrella organization of all the bands, assists bands to start up. A lot of people go like, we would like to become a New Horizons band, but how do you do it? Right. So we can assist in starting up a band anywhere, or string. It doesn't matter what. Sure. There's one called Piano Fusion. They do strictly piano. So we can help out. So anyone who's listening, please go to the NEMA website at newhorizonsmusic.org. And you can simply find out on the website how to do it and get in touch with us. We'd love to see more New Horizons bands and would love to help out anyone. And there's a $500 startup grant for anyone who would like to start up a new band. Yes, so people should know that. Well, there I was, president. There's a pandemic, and everything that we were doing in terms of getting together for band camps, which is what really, again, gelled the organization, wasn't possible. And so we took the opportunity. We said, you know what, our website needs some renewal, and we need to maybe rethink some old documents and bylaws and all that sort of stuff. So we started to work on that. And then we said, well, what about virtual programming? I'd been teaching medical students virtually. And I said, how about we'll do this for music purposes? Yes. And at first people were a bit worried, Yes. Well, Mark, it's just taken off. I mean, we've had, since we started this in early 2020, we've had more than 3,000 people registered for various courses.
Wow, that's great.
It's been fantastic. It could be a 1-hour topic on circus music, or it could be a beginner's ukulele course. We did a 6-week course on rhythm reading, which was attended by over 200 people. So you can see that there's an enormous need to continue to learn online, which of course has its advantages. And we also always allow for breakout sessions, meaning people go into small little breakout rooms where they can meet people from all over the place and say, well, I'm in Albuquerque and I'm in whatever. And they chit chat for 5 or 10 minutes and they get back into the main session. And that has been very, very lovely because people have gotten to know each other.
Sure.
So the virtual sessions are here to stay. We thought we'd try it out, you never know. And then it just took off. And we also really want to feature New Horizons directors. So we are approaching directors from within the system, so to speak, and say, what have you got that you would like to teach virtually? And as a result, we get a lot of younger people entering our system, because it's very easy to age with your audience as an organization. But then you have to start thinking, okay, what would attract a younger person to be a member of this organization? And I think doing things virtually is a very large part of that.
Yes.
And we have restarted our live band camps. So we had one in Quebec, in Mont Tremblant. I happen to be one of the co-directors. We are repeating that this fall. There's a big one coming up in Cincinnati in July. And this is a place where people can come together from all over and play together. And I'd love to see you in one of those one day.
Yeah, yes.
Love
We'll
to.
definitely look forward to that time where we can play together and enjoy the music. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I am a product of that whole system because Christine here in Albuquerque had the idea to start a New Horizon band, and moving forward, she reached out to you all, and one thing led to another, and then I didn't know anything about it. I was going on with my life, and then I retired, and one thing led to another, and here I am playing in the band and one of the directors. So it does work out. And for those that are listening and you're saying, oh, I don't think I could do this, or I have this idea, reach out to Irene Cohen and get it going. Play music.
And I would say reach out to the members of the current board. I'm no longer on the board. Because really, they are volunteers. They work very hard. They love what they're doing, and they're doing a terrific job. So, and anyone who's interested in this sort of work, let us know, because we're always looking for people who are enthusiastically wanting to bring this to other members out there, you know? Yeah.
So, wrapping this up now, going into talk to us and our audience about what in the world and how this music that we have, how it helps us as we are getting older. Why should I continue playing? Why should I start playing an instrument that I've never thought about? Why is everybody so excited about this thing called music?
Mm-hmm. I think that if anyone who's listening would have ever thought, I'd like to play music or I'd like to sing, but I don't know how. And I don't think I have a musical fiber in my body. You hear so many people say that. Don't believe yourself.
That's right.
Go and join a beginner's New Horizon band somewhere in your area, or string instrument, and a whole new world opens up. I was talking to somebody this week, and she's going through a really rough time, and she said, when I play music, I forget about everything else. I think that is something that every musician can relate to. You are doing something that will keep your brain really, really healthy. You are doing breathing exercises at the same time. It is a physical experience, and you learn something absolutely marvelous. So most definitely join.
Yes.
What I would say for me, if there was one wish that can never come true, but imagine it would come true, is that I would be able to enter that room with my grandfather and play, and I fantasized about this because light comes from obviously very large distances. And you can't really stop light. If you put a wall in front of light, it stops. But if you take the wall away, the light keeps going. Right. Sound waves aren't like that. I mean, sound waves are finite. And imagine for a moment that sound waves are not finite. Imagine for a moment that they would be like a light beam. Then I could, in theory, play with my grandfather in that room. Yes. And that would be something to give that back to him, to say, that is what happened. And I think that if you play an instrument and you do that in front of your grandchild, or you do that in front of a child, you give that gift. I have no doubt.
Preach it. Yeah. That's right. Ripples. Yes. And you made me think we just had a death in our family. And
I'm sorry.
Thank you. And I will tell you that one day you will be in that room being able to play again and enjoy the love and the music that's going on. And it's such a part of, and your grandfather and your dad, as you well know, can see what the ripples between you and your children playing, and it's just beautiful with music. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time. God bless you.
Thank
Happy
you.
Passover.
Thank you, and have a happy Easter to you. And
Thank you.
thank you for doing this. And you know what, Mark, I'm holding you to it. We're going to play together one day. Who knows where? Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to thank our listeners for supporting the podcast and listening today, and we do appreciate you finding the podcast. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, let's all try to play all the right notes. Take care.
You've been listening to The Podium. If you would like to be a guest on The Podium, email the show at onthe-podium2@gmail.com. That's ONTHEPODIUM TOO @gmail.com.